Divorce papers have been properly filed. As for the property division, I'll be taking the house. You hardly have any right to refuse. With those words, Ben left the hospital room. My pleas for him to wait, my desire to have a proper conversation, were completely ignored by Ben. This is how I was discarded. Despite suffering from a serious illness like cancer, I became lonely. But strangely, the negative emotions lingering in my heart seemed to have disappeared. Perhaps my love for Ben had completely faded at that moment. Ben, who insulted me and repeatedly acted selfishly, deserves retribution. I thought so and began to calmly strategize my revenge. My name is Wendy Morgan, a 50-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Ben. We have no children. Since our marriage, I thought we were supporting each other as a couple. At least, that's what I believed. However, there was an irreparable rift between me and Ben. I believe that in a marriage, partners should support each other. Sometimes challenge each other like rivals, and complement each other's needs. But there was no such supportive relationship between us. Is dinner not ready yet? Hey, hurry up, I'm in trouble here. Ben, who had a day off from his ordinary job, stuck his head out of the room and demanded dinner as soon as I returned home from an errand. There are no breaks in being a housewife. If you neglect household duties even for a day, it affects our life. However, Ben, who works at an ordinary company, has holidays. But he only uses them for himself. Even though we've been married for 30 years, Ben never offered a helping hand. No matter how busy I was for various reasons. A housewife's job is just housework. As a working person, it's normal to work hard without slacking off. Ben seemed to perceive a housewife's job this way and never allowed me to rest, even if I was ill. There were days when I was so sick with a cold that I could hardly get up. Even in such painful situations, Ben would rush into my room at the usual time, demanding, "Make my meal." He never showed any intention to care for me when I was sick. Moreover, he would go out alone, saying, "I have plans to meet friends." He'd drink with his friends until late at night and return home completely drunk. I thought marriage was about supporting each other. But it seems Ben and I had very different understandings of it. In the early days of our marriage, I tried to bridge this gap, but no matter how much I talked, Ben insisted he was right, saying, "Don't complain, you're just a housewife." My love for him had long since faded. I didn't expect him to support me in everything, but I'm human too and have hard days. A kind word would have been nice in those times. But Ben never accepted such thoughts. As I realized this, the distance between me and Ben gradually grew. Before I knew it, I no longer felt like confronting him, and facing him became a burden. Our marriage became utterly joyless and meaningless. I understood this better than anyone. It was then that I felt something wrong with my health. I've always been prone to illness, but this time it felt clearly different. I contacted my father, who took me to the hospital. There, I was diagnosed with cancer. Fortunately, it was detected early, and the doctor said I could start treatment immediately. Wanting to begin as soon as possible, I asked my father to bring only the essential items from home. And I quickly went through the hospital admission procedures. That day, I couldn't meet Ben because of his work, so I sent him a simple message saying, "Cancer has been found. I'm being hospitalized immediately for treatment." Honestly, the thought of cancer and its difficult treatment filled me with worry about the future. During these anxious moments, the image of Ben came to my mind. I thought my love for Ben had completely faded. But somewhere deep in my heart, I might have harbored a desire to face him properly and continue our life together as a couple. Even though Ben had always been cold and never showed any concern for me, Now that I was so weakened, he might worry and say, "Hey, are you okay?" He might even offer me some warm words. I would have been satisfied with just one visit from him. I wanted to see his face, even if only for a moment. I wondered if he was struggling with meals and housework in my absence. I felt sorry for not being able to do the household chores I always took for granted. However, even after several days in the hospital, Ben did not visit me. He had read the message I sent before being hospitalized. Moreover, he didn't send any message of concern, not even a simple reply like, "Got it." His reaction seemed as if he didn't care about me at all. Despite suffering from a serious illness like cancer and being so weakened, Ben did not show any concern for me. This harsh reality shook me deeply and caused immense pain. I thought I understood enough. It was foolish of me to have expectations. But is it so wrong to wish for concern from a husband when one is physically and mentally weak? Is it such an unreasonable desire? I never intended to be a burden to Ben. I just wanted him to care about me, to offer a kind word, just once. Even such a small wish was denied to me. I decided to stop expecting anything from Ben. With this renewed mindset, I fought for my life in treatment. As expected, the battle with the illness was excruciating, filled with enduring pain and suffering. The side effects of the medication undeniably broke down my body. And I spent many sleepless nights in severe discomfort. I often thought of giving up treatment, letting my deteriorating body take its course, and ending my life. But every time I felt this way, the encouraging words from my parents, "You're doing great. It will surely get better," helped me forcefully revive my weakened spirit and survive until today. Then, on a day when I was feeling particularly unwell, lying in bed and blankly staring at the ceiling, the door to my room suddenly opened. It wasn't the day for my parents to visit. Wondering who it was, I looked and saw Ben standing there. Had he finally come to visit me, concerned about my condition? Looking at my emaciated face with hollow cheeks, would he come to dislike me even more? A whirlwind of emotions left me speechless. Without any concern for my state, Ben sat on a chair next to the bed, stared at me, and laughed. "So this is how bad one can look with cancer, huh? You don't even look like a woman anymore." His words made me feel as if the blood had drained from my face. These were words that should never be said to someone fighting cancer. I didn't want him to say anything more. Unaware of my feelings, Ben continued with even more hurtful words. "Ever since you've been hospitalized and not at home, every day has been like heaven. The house is a mess, but I don't even have to go back there. Life is so comfortable without you." His heartless words reopened my wounds. Why must I be subjected to such cruel words? Why is there not a single word of concern from him? Although I wanted to vehemently criticize Ben, my weakened body couldn't move as I wished. And all I could do was silently accept his brutal words. I looked at Ben with a vacant gaze. Noticing my stare, he laughed condescendingly. Then, suddenly saying, "Oh, yeah, by the way," he uttered unbelievable words. "Oh, yeah, by the way, I've already filed the divorce papers. I'll be taking the house as the property division. You hardly have any right to refuse." The moment I heard those words, my vision blurred and twisted. "Did you file the divorce papers without even consulting me? Why?" As I was at a loss for words, Ben continued to speak. "I've really fallen for someone. She's 20 years younger, but I'm serious about her. I plan to be with her, so you're in the way." So, he was having an affair? That thought raced through my mind. However, Ben, having said what he wanted to, began preparing to leave. Wait a minute. Even as I said that, Ben paid no attention. There was clearly no love left for me in his heart. The realization was so painful, I felt like it didn't matter anymore. I see. Understood. As I said this, Ben left the hospital room with a pleased laugh. After that, I endured my treatment with even more determination than before. Despite the hardships, I focused my will, resolved to completely cure my cancer and regain my health. 2 days passed like this. It might sound short, but for me, unable to sleep properly at night, those 2 days felt very long. I wondered if the divorce Ben mentioned really happened, or if he had said it just to unnerve me. The uncertainty was unbearable, but somehow, I managed to continue my treatment. In fact, I had a trump card to completely bring down Ben. Even Ben, who seemed almost inhuman, would be thrown into chaos once he realized it. If panicked, he would surely try to contact me in some way. While waiting with this thought, Ben's call came in. Thinking it improper to answer in the hospital room, I pretended not to notice. But Ben persistently kept calling. Even on silent mode, the continuous calls were too annoying. I'm in the hospital room and it's inconvenient to have my phone ringing, so please don't call. After sending this message, the calls finally stopped. But then came texts like, "Please let me talk to you, just once, please. I was wrong about everything. I'll apologize properly." Apparently, he had resorted to messaging since I wasn't answering his calls. All his words seemed like self-defense. Probably, Ben realized why I accepted the divorce so easily. "Can I come over there now?" Faced with my silence, Ben seemed to have reached his limit and sent that message. Honestly, facing Ben now, amidst my grueling battle with illness, felt like nothing but pain. But if I refused, he'd probably keep calling, so I replied, "Do as you like." My revenge was about to begin. Ben, who had unjustly treated me for so long and divorced without consent, deserved a severe punishment that would make him despise his life. I was inwardly looking forward to bringing him down to the depths of despair. "Hey. What the hell is this all about?" Ben entered the room with such a shout. His tone suggested he was definitely in a state of panic, mentally cornered. To an outsider, it might seem like he's overreacting, but it was natural for Ben to be this agitated. After all, I had been hiding an incredibly important secret for a critical moment. I had no idea that you had assets worth $10 million. Why didn't you tell me how much you had? As he spoke, Ben placed my passbook on the desk. The passbook clearly showed a deposit of over $10 million. Eh? I never mentioned it because you never asked. How could I imagine a housewife like you having so much money? If I knew you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced. That's not my problem. It's Ben's fault for divorcing me without proper confirmation. Stop with the pointless excuses. But how did you manage to acquire such a huge fortune? Despite his domineering behavior and divorcing me without my consent. Ben couldn't stop his selfish remarks when he found out I had assets over $10 million. Why didn't you tell me? I wouldn't have divorced you if I knew. I decided to reveal the truth to the selfish Ben. The truth is, I accumulated this fortune over $10 million through investments I started to fill my spare time. It was my parents who suggested, "Why don't you try investing?" Our family life was comfortable even on Ben's salary alone. But I wanted to contribute to our finances in some way. My father, knowledgeable about investments, immediately taught me diligently when I expressed interest. Thanks to my father's guidance, I started with the hope of making even a small profit and continued investing steadily. I made my first investment 5 years ago. Since then, I rapidly improved and became capable of earning significant amounts of money through investments. Even my father was astonished, saying, "I never expected you to grow this much." The profits I generated over these 5 years are the $10 million recorded in the passbook Ben brought. Actually, I was planning to tell you when the timing was right. But then I got cancer. You divorced me without listening to anything I had to say. I never intended to keep this wealth a secret forever. Once I overcame my battle with cancer and could return to my normal life, I planned to tell Ben about this $10 million. I intended to share it with him so we could continue our life as a couple and use it when necessary. However, Ben selfishly concluded to divorce before I could share this. Now that we're strangers, it's strange to share it with him. Given this outcome, the entire $10 million probably belongs to me now. Hearing my story, Ben, with a flushed face, began shouting. If I knew you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced you. It's your fault for keeping it a secret. So pay me $10 million in the property division. You need to atone for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband. Whether he was panicking over the reality of such a vast fortune, or frustrated that he couldn't get his hands on it, Ben started saying the unthinkable. Since we're already divorced, no matter what, it's impossible to give him this $10 million. Still, Ben, seeing but unable to reach the $10 million right before him, started saying things that couldn't happen in reality, and I unintentionally laughed. To this, Ben yelled at me, "What are you laughing at? Stop belittling me. I've always been annoyed by your attitude. I never thought you'd be so cunning to have such a fortune as a wife. A wife's assets belong to her husband. You have to give me this $10 million. What? A wife's assets belong to her husband? I never intended to keep this secret forever. I was planning to tell you, but you divorced me first. Stop making excuses. It's all your fault for keeping secrets." Without any recollection of making excuses, Ben became more enraged with each word I spoke, blaming and berating me. Honestly, his shouting was too much for my head, still recovering from illness, and I couldn't bear it. I knew it was pointless to continue talking with Ben, who wouldn't accept my words and would surely try to make me the villain. Once I realized it was futile to continue this discussion with Ben, who refused to listen, I quickly ended it. Enough is enough. You divorced me of your own accord, right? Who filed the divorce papers without my consent? I always thought your behavior was terrible, but I never imagined you could be so cruel. To think a person could feel this much frustration. Now, my heart was filled not with the pain of battling cancer, but with resentment towards Ben. He should have realized that shouting this loudly would affect my weakened body. But more than that, I couldn't suppress my anger towards this selfish person who sat arrogantly beside my bed, accusing me with words born from his self-centered thoughts. Do you know what I thought when I found out I had cancer? I thought maybe this would make Ben worry about me a little, be kinder to me, and reconsider his feelings. But instead, you didn't even come to visit me in the hospital. When you finally showed up, you told me you had filed for divorce without my consent and that you would take the house. How can you be so selfish and then come here criticizing me for having a substantial asset? I've said it many times, I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was planning to find the right time to tell you. You destroyed that chance with your own hands. I had never blamed Ben this much before. I had always forgiven Ben's selfish behavior, thinking we were a couple and should support each other. I never scolded or reprimanded him, always enduring for his sake. But the reason I could endure and keep going was because I had love for Ben. I truly loved him. But now, I don't have any love left for him. All I feel is an uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards Ben, who only speaks selfishly. How can someone be so self-centered? What kind of upbringing leads to such a lack of empathy? After all, A person who indulges in an affair and divorces without consent can't possibly have serious thoughts. I was too stunned to speak, realizing it was futile to harbor any doubts. Please, my girlfriend found out you have $10 million. And says she'll divorce me if I don't get it from you. If I don't get this money, I'll be all alone. You still love me, right? Don't you want to help the person you love? So, Ben's mistress also knows about my $10 million fortune. He must have carelessly told her. From Ben's story, it seems his mistress is also quite obsessed with money. Birds of a feather flock together, I guess. As much as Ben and his mistress seem to be a match, I couldn't care less about him. No matter how much suffering comes his way, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Please. I'll do anything. Just give me the $10 million. Otherwise, I'll suffer. Please, help me. I had never seen Ben so desperate. And his expression seemed so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, I felt disappointed and miserable, realizing he had never been this desperate about anything related to me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for Ben became. I realized that talking to him anymore was pointless. No more dealing with this rotten man could possibly lead to my happiness. I felt foolish for suffering and hoping during my illness that he might come and speak kindly to me one day. Oblivious to my feelings, Ben continued to plead, please. I'm begging you. Help me. But I couldn't bear to hear his words any longer. Please leave now. As I said this, Ben started to plead with a look of desperation. Even that was noisy and unpleasant to me. I pressed the nurse call button. I explained the situation and asked the nurse to get rid of Ben. A security guard came and forcibly removed him from the room. Please listen to me. I need you. He shouted until the moment he was thrown out, but I no longer accepted any of his words. Afterwards, he visited the hospital many times. But the nurses, knowing the situation, never let him near my room again. According to a friend, Ben, unable to get the $10 million, disappointed his mistress and was promptly divorced, now left alone. As for me, I continued to confront my cancer with determination. And finally recovered and was discharged. The relief of overcoming my difficult battle with cancer and the newfound energy I felt were more precious than anything. Now, I'm living a peaceful and relaxed life, gradually using the assets I grew through investments.